shows for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications option. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.
Attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again, but it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, the only thing that makes us all believe.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters. It's an evening with Stu Penman, Ask Penman tonight. And first question I'm going to say is, how's the bacon, Stu?
Aye, it was quite funny, that wasn't it?
Very funny.
Actually, the double-edged sword because I'm home alone. So if you use the words, I've been baking by myself.
Yeah. So, anyway, good stuff. As always, we've got an hour to fill and entertain the masses and a chance for people to ask you a question, whatever they want. And I noticed you put it out on Twitter. We had one or two people that had asked questions on there. Do you go back to bed after your morning walk? Was probably one of the most interesting ones. Do you, Stu?
I wish I had the chance to go back to bed after my morning walk. Thing is, I haven't been able to do the photographs because it's been really windy, unseasonably windy in Barry, and normally you get the wind in the winter, but there's been high winds here for the last 3 weeks, and it just brings like warm air, but a lot of sand in the sky, and which brings flies, which means you get bitten loads, but also means the air quality is low, so you just get your lungs full of more than what I normally put in them. So I've been, believe it or not, pounding the treadmill. So as soon as the wind drops, which is apparently going to be next Tuesday or Wednesday, I'll be back to the photographs. But quite funnily, I think I blamed Mitch for one time I didn't do the photos. I said, so apologies that there'll be no morning walk photograph this morning, and that got more likes than the photographs normally get. So I don't know if I should be putting them back on or not.
Classic. Well, see what happens. The main thing is you're keeping fit. It's good for your mental health as well, getting out for a walk, mate. So it is good. Ian likes me shirt. He said, yeah, I got it today. As most of you know, I didn't buy shirts under the Ashley regime, but I'm certainly making hay with Adidas now. Honestly, you could literally blow, your month's wages going and looking at the stuff that's on sale. Even just Adidas. I went to JD Sports today and had a look at the Adidas original range in there, and there's some absolutely brilliant stuff. Like literally, you could go mental. Really, you could max your card out on some of the stuff. But I bought the home and the home top and this top. I bought another leisure top as well, and really, really impressed with this stuff. Looking forward to. I wouldn't get the pro. Somebody said pro version. I wouldn't get the pro version, Steve. It's a ridiculous price. To be honest, £85 for a tune top is a ridiculous price to start with. So paying anything over that, I couldn't justify it. But the fact that the money goes to the club, you know, the money goes into Newcastle United, and they make a few quid out of it. Well, good stuff. And, you know, I'm more than happy to support the team. And I don't think I'm too old to wear a football top at my age still. Yes, Toon24, good to see you as well. Okay, questions. We've got a couple of questions coming in. Get them in for Stu. You've got an hour to ask Stu questions. Darren says, question for Stu. Why is this transfer window looking like the past three seasons? Pre-season starts on Monday and nobody in. Are you worried that we won't sign enough players to help us this season?
I'm not worried in the slightest at all, but I can understand why people are, due to the sound bites that came out of the club, specifically from Eddie Howe regarding starting fast. It was imperative, and we've done anything but. However, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of reasons why, because that opens up the PSR, and then I'll start bleating on about Peter Silverstone, etc. But if you've got, we don't know what their figure is they've got to spend. But if you ask any fan, they'll say it'll be between 3 to 6 to 10 signings. You know, it's like, but reasonably, you look, people are suggesting at least 4 or 5 signings. And if you've got a limited amount of money, then if you overpay for one, that takes from the other. You know, so I think this window is something that I've reiterated quite often. For me, it's about quality rather than quantity. And we have to be improving the first team start 11 or the first team squad. And when I say the first team squad, I'm on about people who will come off the bench and not weaken the team. You know, we've probably got about 13, 14, possibly 15 at that stage. We need to get that up to a minimum of 18 to go to next season. And see that about Castore. I did notice when you mentioned your strip there, Steve, it was 85 quid. But if you got the professional one, the pro one, it's 110. Is that right?
I didn't check the price of it, but I think that's about right, yeah.
Then the Wolves, who are also in the Premier League, I noticed somewhere during this week that their pro strip is only £80. Say only, but it's £80. So there is a big difference. And then that opens another conversation of, well, if we're paying 30 quid more, that money goes into the club, where are the transfers? But do we want to go down the route of doing what Chelsea do, just buying anyone that someone else is interested to, or Everton, anyone who they thought was available and overpaid them? I mean, look at the trouble they've got in, and the amount of money that Chelsea have spent, as they seem to be our nearest rivals in the league for the last couple of years. Are they that much better than us with all that extra money? I wouldn't have thought so. So slow and steady wins the race, I think it could be for this transfer window. But saying that, I do expect Eddie Howe to get his wish and get at least 1 or 2 in before the pre-season starts next week. That's just my reading of the situation. But if it means you've got to wait that bit longer to get the quality that will improve the squad, they can go out and spend money now, Steve, and just bring people in who are no better than what we've got. And now that the financial year is finished, some people have finished their contracts, etc. There's got to be a little bit more room available to go and entice these players with bigger contracts. But again, that creates if you bring someone in who becomes one of the top 3 or 4 highest paid players in the squad, you'll have those people saying, well, I deserve more than him. I've got us to this stage. And the people below that saying, well, if they're getting that, we should get this, you know, because this is where it can go against Eddie Howe. He's improved every player where their salary is probably worth more than the current market. So, you know, you get people like Jamal Lewis off their wage books. We're still sitting with 60 grand a week on Isaac Hayden. You know, so we're not going as fast as we want. We're not going as fast as any other supporter wants. We're not going as fast as I'm sure the club wants. But they are going as fast as they can. But they have to make sure that every penny they spend is a productive penny. And that's why one of the questions I've seen was, do you still trust the process? Absolutely, I do. And you can come out and say, look where we were 4 years ago, but that's past, you know, because how far back do you go? Look where we were 70 years ago when we were winning trophies on a regular basis. It's where we're going to. And at the moment, I'm living in the present. And if you look at the last, I can answer that question, Jules. If I was there, the answer would have been no. But I think they might have left 1 or 2 bottles. But if the present is as it is, where 2 or 3 seasons we've got the Champions League and we've won a trophy, and that's replicated over the next 2 or 3 seasons, I'll take that right now. And I know I like to mimic George as saying we're being a greedy little duck, but I don't think many reasonably minded Newcastle fans wouldn't take 2 more Champions Leagues and another trophy in the next 3 seasons. So allow them to do their job, and if that's trusting the process, I don't think the manager merits criticism that's been directed at him. I don't think the players deserve any criticism, and we've made it abundantly clear on this channel where the majority of us, me specifically, believe where the money could be, where the criticism could be apportioned to, simply because I always try to simplify things, Steve. And if you're in a position where PSR has a stranglehold on teams like Newcastle, you look and say, right, as fans, have we done our bit? Well, yes, we've sold out every home game since the takeover. You've just said at the start in your opening bits that you could empty your credit card on the Adidas Originals and all the Adidas stuff. The membership scheme that's come in, that brings in a few million a year. So as fans, we're doing our bit. And if they can't spend as much as they want, we're filling the stadium. So they either get a bigger stadium, which they can't do overnight, or they bring more revenue in. And that's always been my bone of contention over the last couple of years, as you know. So that's, to me, where the fingers should be pointed or the questions should be asked. Because if you can get, and I know me and Mitch did a low-hanging fruit thing of where we could generate at least an extra 30 to 40 million pound on, and that's without front of shirt sponsors or new stadium sponsors or things like that. We talked about it, and that for me would bring in an extra player, and there would be no PSR issues. So they're either playing very, very canny, or they're not as capable as they're in a position to be.
Okay, plenty of questions coming in now. Thank you to everybody who is submitting them. We'll try and get through as many as we can. Terry Armstrong, good evening. He says, my first live in a while. If you can only get to 1 away Champions League this season, who would you like to go and see, Stu?
For selfish reasons, because my kids are in Tenerife, I would want a Spanish team away, whether that be one of the Madrid teams or Barcelona. I've done Barcelona away twice, so maybe a trip to Madrid, which I've been to before, but not to watch Newcastle play. And I'm not all for all this loving with Real Madrid. I think their ethics aren't entirely correct, but I think a club like Atletico Madrid with Trippier returning there, I think that would be good because they've got really passionate fans, and they are sponsored by Riyadh Air, which is something I've hinted at in the past. So a trip to Madrid, I can do that 2 or 3 days, maybe 4, then get myself down to Tenerife. So it's 2 birds with 1 stone. So if it was an away game, it would be a Spanish one for me.
Okay. Seacrest Boxers, good evening. Stu, your ideas on sponsorship, especially the short-term for now ones, and the clever way to get Isaac a wage to stay are brilliant. Can there not be a way to make sure they get to those who matter?
Well, I'd like to thank my mum for changing her username. See that the ideas are brilliant. Well, that's not my decision, is it? It's that was just me, and that come out on an impulse. But working in business, and that's what you're encouraged to do, to think out the box. I know it's a coined and corny phrase, but there is ways, and you have seen other teams do it. So I don't see that. For me, it was a suggestion. It wasn't saying this is what should be done. It was a suggestion, but it did receive good feedback. I'm just trying to read the question as I'm speaking now. That's a different question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. So
I can't bring it back up either.
No, sorry. So regarding the sponsorships, I honestly believe there's 30 or 40 million left out there, and you can always write in a contract that things are performance related or situation related. You know, for now we'll take this off you, and if the circumstances change, you agree to pay this or we can cut the contract. Being associated with a Premier League team, it's a brand, as the same commercial world, is very, very profitable for companies, especially ones that are in the top, especially ones that are in the Champions League. Now, considering you could get a sponsor that would have, when Eddie does his press conferences, you got behind him Adidas, Seller, Nude and stuff like that, just to get your name on there, or not your personal name, the company name on there, that's going to be seen 10 times minimum. Well, I would say 8 times minimum next season with the games that they've got in the Champions League. And realistically, it should be a minimum of 10 because Newcastle should finish in that top 24. So you look at the advertising revenue that could bring in. For me, that's a simple one. We've talked about training ground sponsor. We talked about training kit sponsor, which we still don't have. And there's so much that can be done. And I'm sure times have moved on from when, was it Virgin took over from Northern Rock, or was it the other way around, and they give out free stickers tying over the top of the shirt? Yeah. There's things that can be done like that. And if someone's willing to come in and spend that money, you can always write it in the contract, right? But this has to be replaced, and there's people in a far better position to understand how clothing works and stuff like that. But even as a fan, if I bought a training top and it had, for example, Seller on it, and then by the end of the season, the training kit was sponsored by Riyadh Air, but it brought an extra 20 million into the club, I wouldn't make that much. I think there's 10 weeks before the Christmas tree, July, August. No, it's less than that. It's less than 10 weeks. 1st of September, Roger. So we're looking at about 9 weeks. I think there's so much that can be done that isn't being done. And how long do you hide behind the excuses with this 115 charges with Man City? Because that's all it is. It's an excuse. It's a convenient excuse to give. And what happens when there's a decision? We all know if it goes against Manchester City, that'll be appealed. And then you could be waiting another year, 2 years. And all this time, we're missing out on sponsorships, which A, doesn't allow us to pay the contracts to the players that we want to keep, and B, doesn't allow us to attract the type of players that we want that should be on a par, because we don't want to attract the players that will be squad fillers. We want to attract players that will improve the squad and improve the first team, and these don't come cheap now. And you can only keep buying so many youngins for so long and hope they go on, because without doubt, by the end of next season, you'll have Livramento and Hall knocking on the door asking for better wages, because if not, they'll be offered double, treble, quadruple of what they're getting currently. So we have to have the surplus of cash, and for me, it's neglected. Let's just say, if I'm being polite, it's neglected, that area of the club. Yeah.
Okay. Next question comes from Scott. Do you think that we'll go after players from abroad that we just haven't discussed yet, like Bruno, Tonali, Isak? They've all been brilliant. Premier League prices are just too high to sign 5 players.
Yeah, you can add Botman to that as well. And then there's also ways of doing it with the players we've got. This Trafford situation, they're wanting 40. No, we're not going to pay 40 for him. I don't even think Chelsea would pay 40 for him. But they need it for their books. And I suggested before we could do a swap, take either Pope or Dubravka or Vlachodimos and overcharge for them, overcharge for Trafford. And if, let's say, they give us 15 for Vlachodimos, that gets us our money back. We haven't lost money on that. Put them on a 5-year contract, and they're only paying 3 million a year. But if we paid 40, they're getting 8 million a year back. But they can put the 40 on the book straight away. But going abroad, you can add Botman to that list. There's definitely value in there, but I can understand why Eddie Howe is wanting Premier League ready, because as a manager, you're judged on the here and now. The club can talk about 3-year projects, 5-year projects, etc. Will be number one by the time Saudi host the World Cup in 2034. As nice as a person as Eddie Howe is, he's not really interested in Newcastle in 2034. He's interested in Newcastle in 25, 26, because that's what he's going to be judged on. So if he's got someone who he brings in, they have to be really Premier League ready. And a phrase that's been used quite often is Eddie Howe fit, Eddie Howe ready, as in what's expected of them. So I can understand why he's leaning towards Premier League players, but I would not be surprised in the slightest if he does go abroad, and I think that's because he's been forced to. In one of his press conferences, he said that we've got no friends in the Premier League. So I think they're looking for players who, if they are getting players from abroad, there'll be players who are ready to come in into the first team if they're spending big, rather than someone like, I mean, if you look at now, Ekitike, they wanted him two years ago, and look at the value he's been put at now. So there's nothing wrong with the scouting system. They just need to go and get players that are ready to come straight into the team or be capable of being straight into the team. Because the way this next season's going to pan out, we can't afford to start slowly and then try and play catch up. You know, momentum's a massive thing in football, whether it's good or bad. So for me, he's got to have players in place, and that's why he wanted them before the transfer window opened.
Welcome back to Jules. Welcome back to Jules in the chat. She's had a little sabbatical. Good to see you back in the chat. She says, Stu, you touched on this earlier, but do you think some of the fan base are too quick to jump on Eddie Howe and say, for example, poor negotiator, has his favourites, won't sell certain players, won't buy from abroad? I do, and in my opinion, it is unfair.
There is, but the something you mentioned was, I don't know if it was last night on your Ask Steve or on the fans forum. There's a lot of people, especially on social media, who aren't even Newcastle fans, but claim to be Newcastle fans, you know, and they like to stir the pot. Then you've got other ones who are Newcastle fans, and they come out with, and I'll spell it because I'm aware of the team. Well, I won't spell it all. I'll spell some of the words, some of the letters. B. I've got a B. I've got a U. I've got an L. I've got an S. I've got a T. That's right, bluster. That's the word I was thinking of. They come out with a lot of bluster for reactions. And I think sometimes it's unfair because it doesn't represent, I would imagine, the majority of the match-going fans, or even the fans who have to watch from outside the ground because either they can't get in it or they can't get there, like yourself. So I get the question, but I think it's very easy to criticise. And if you're not just about football, but all walks of life, if you look at work, it's very easy to be negative, and you'll get people who come to you because, yeah. Whereas the ones, you don't have to be uber positive, but you could be realistic. And for me, I think it's unfair that Eddie Howe's been accused of only wanting to buy English. If you look at the people we've got in the team, you know, sometimes you've got to cut your cloth accordingly. And I don't think we would have signed Isaac or Bruno or Botman or Tonali without Eddie Howe's approval. So he's seen these players as capable of coming straight in the team, and that goes on to my previous answer, where I think if we are buying abroad, which I don't think there's any reluctance to do so, then these people will be of a higher quality. They'll be buying the here and now, not the potential.
Okay, lots of comments coming in. Keep them coming, and we will get as many questions as we can. Nikki, welcome into the chat. New face in the chat there. Is it a coincidence that Pope is commenting on Trafford's social media saying, see you soon, and Asula is currently on holiday with Langanger? Could the lads know more than we do?
You would, reading into it, you'd think it's an obvious assumption, wouldn't you? I think the Langanger link comes from having the same agent, and obviously they was introduced by Isaac, and then them two seem to have hit it off. You know, you get that in the real world, shall we call it. You know, you're getting introduced to people who then become your friends as well. And these are young, well, I call them kids because of my age, but these are young lads who are very, very wealthy for their age, and they want to go on holiday, and they've got many things in common as Premier League squad players anyway. So there's nothing wrong with it, but I think they know what they're doing. They're being a bit mischievous, putting it on the social medias because they know they'll get people talking. Now, if Langanger is the target, then it's going to be to come to a situation where he doesn't want to say, I want to leave, and then the clubs don't agree a fee, because that puts him in all sorts of trouble if he has to stay at the City ground going into next season. But he can do it behind the scenes. But from everything that you read, everything that you watch, everything that you hear, I would think that him coming to Newcastle would be his preferred choice. But also the way contracts are, if he asks for a transfer, it could cost him a couple of million. And he might be friends with our young maverick, but that doesn't mean he's friends enough to lose a couple of million quid over him. So, there was another question I seen flash on the screen before, is would I want Langanger? I absolutely would. And I think what Eddie Howe has liked, and this goes back to before we signed Gordon, nothing to do with the attitude, but at the time it was the Gordon, the Isaac, and the Almiron. It was pace to hit people on the counter attack, and Langanger's got pace to burn, and he offers a little bit more than, well, say a little bit more. He offers a different variation of play to what Miggy does. He's certainly an upgrade on that, and he's off an age where we could get the best 5 years of his career. And if, for me, and this is not Eddie Howe can do no wrong, but if that's who he believes is the person that will improve his starting 11, then I wouldn't be surprised if we actually go out and just bite the bullet and pay the bit extra, because it seems to be everything. We've always said it needs three things to make a transfer work. It needs to be a willing buyer, a willing player, and a willing seller. I think at the moment we've got 2 out of 3. We just need to tempt the seller into agreeing. But at the same time, how long do they want an unhappy player on their books? So it might not happen straight away. And I could say this, and tomorrow it's announced, which will be fantastic. But it's a position on the pitch that needs to be upgraded. And it certainly needs to be bolstered, because we've only got one recognised right winger. So of all the positions that people have talked about are priority, that for me is the number one priority, because we've only got Jacob Murphy there, unless you're playing people out of position, which quite clearly they don't like doing, but they'll do, but they don't like doing. So for that position, if Langanger's your starter and Murphy's your backup, I think that would be a very, very, very astute acquisition.
Okay, don't forget you can email us if you want to, nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. And I've also put the link and pinned it in the chat to our website. Quite a lot being added to the website over the course of the last couple of weeks. Big thanks to Media Arts for all the work they do on there. We have launched our new T-shirts. We've got the old retro T-shirt, which of course features our old badge, which was with us in those very early days of NUFC Matters. And we've also got the current logo on a T-shirt as well, but you can buy them in our shop at nufcmatters.co.uk. And we have got a couple of the cup final shirts left. They are selling quite well, signed by Alexander Isak and Dan Byrne. And of course, we've got the Anthony Gordon Carabao Cup semi-final hero, both home and away, signed shirt from him as well, and a few pictures on there as well. So if you want to get yourself onto the website, nufcmatters.co.uk, do so now. We're going to have a quick break, and then we'll be back with the questions with Stu after this.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them at www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at their website, mrvickys.co.uk, email info@mrvickys.co.uk, or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. 2-crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. Hot and cold snacks and drinks available on the coach, all excursions included. Their website, unitedgrouptravel.com, email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com, telephone 01670 632 460 or 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And if you like listening to us as a podcast, you can go to Sports Social Podcast Network or to iTunes, Spotify, or other podcast providers. If you want to support the show, then hit the subscribe button. It's free. We do 7 shows a week. Hit the little thumb up under the video, which is the like button, or click share to share to your social media. You can also join the channel on YouTube by hitting the join button for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to become an NUFC Matters member, you can go to nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk. It's a £25 one-off fee. You get your pen, you get your badge, a key ring, you get your beer mat and your fridge magnet and your membership card, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk for that. And we have an event early next year, 13th of February 2026, an evening with Beardsley, Waddle and Gascoigne takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. To buy your tickets for that event, go to the box office 0191 243 1171 or Tyne Theatre and Opera House.uk.
And if you want your tickets for Gascoigne, Waddle, Beardsley, you just want entry-only tickets, there are limited availability on Voucher, so you can get yourself a bargain. We always put some early bird tickets out on there, and they are on there now. And end of this month, we are in July now, we will be screening the Cup final again at the Tyneside Irish Centre, Friday the 25th of July, 7 o'clock doors. But we've given you a little treat here. It is a free entry event. We are going to have a couple of raffles on the night to raise a few quid for Age UK North Tyneside. But it is limited to 100 tickets. It'll be on the big screen at the Irish Centre. But if you enter, you must be at the event to potentially claim your prize. This is the prize. It is a replica medal in a nice little montage. So you've got 100 to 1 chance of winning that. But you must be at the event. So please don't register for the event and not turn up. You won't win the prize. But yeah, it'll be a good night out, a good opportunity for us to all get together again before the start of the new season. And all you need to do is go to nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk and register for your ticket. It is free, and you've got a 100 to 1 chance of winning that medal. Okay, back with the questions, and quite a few coming in. What did you make of the kit launch video? Says Ian.
I thought it was superb. I think all the videos that Adidas have done have been bang on the money. Very emotive, provoking, and nods to the past, the present. And I think for 95% of the time they've been brilliant with it. So fair play to them. I don't think anyone who's a Newcastle fan have watched that and thought, oh, that was rubbish. I think they've been superb, I do.
Yeah, me too. Newcastle have ended their interest in Peter Shilton after negotiations over. Yeah, it's not that bad, man. It's not that bad, for God's sake. Okay, moving on quickly. Chipper says, does Stu know the crack on Callum Wilson? 1 minute he's not on the site, the next he's back on. Is he here or isn't he here? What's going on, do you think, with Callum Wilson? I mean, we haven't heard anything to the contrary. He's obviously, been part of the squad. His contract's up now, but no news from the club at this moment in time, Stu.
Well, I was expecting some random questions tonight, and I thought Chippers might provide one of them, but no, I don't know anything much about Callum Wilson's crack. But regarding his position with the club, I wouldn't be surprised if they do retain him. And I mentioned I think it was the end of April, start of May. The phrase I used was, I think we're seeing the last flickers of Callum Wilson's Newcastle career, because he looked a yard off. He looked as if he was coming to terms with the fact that his Newcastle career was finishing, and that could have a big emotional effect on him. But at the same time, if we are to go out and buy the right centre half, the goalkeeper, the right winger, they're not going to come cheap, are they? So having someone like him there, and I'm not saying this should happen, but if it does, I can understand it. I think, especially with the emergence of Asula as well, because if we do get a right winger, we're going to have two of those. We're going to have two left wingers. We need to have 2 or 3 forwards where we can rotate and rest. And if they do keep him, maybe worth a pull. Would they rather have Wilson or CalvertLewin? It's an area where we certainly do need to improve on and have additions in. But if Callum Wilson was to come on for 15, 20 minutes and play in cup games and stuff like that, and him and Asula could rotate, I wouldn't be that much against him being renewed for another year. And if things change, we could always then look to sell him, and give him a move to the sun. But now we've said that, it would just be a ticking time bomb as well, wouldn't it? Like if you got injured in pre-season or at the start of the season, then we have to go out and spend. But again, I want to point everything back to if we had the extra revenue, which is what's restricting our spending, then it wouldn't be a debate. I think Callum Wilson, I hate the phrase, he's been a good servant. They get paid a lot of money to try their best, but he's done it in difficult circumstances, and the hardest position on the pitch is the goal scorer. And he was good. He was scoring goals for us in a team that is nowhere near as good as the one that we've got. And I think we should all be grateful for him, but you don't want to get sentimental and say, well, let's keep him because what he did 3 or 4 years ago. I understand in an ideal world, it would be thank you very much, Callum. You'll always be in our hearts. But if he is to stay, it'll be a bit part player on a reduced contract, but he might not even accept that. You know, you've referenced these high performance podcasts that he did recently. And he still has a very high belief in himself a strong belief in himself of what he can actually produce. So does he want to be known as number 2, probably by the end of the season, number 3 centre forward for Newcastle? Or does he want to go out and ply his trade elsewhere? I mean, that's a question for well, it's a discussion for Callum Wilson and Eddie Howe. You know, Eddie Howe might think, thanks, Callum, you've done everything you can. We've got this guy coming in. But the longer the window goes on without a replacement, and the longer it goes on without Callum Wilson signing for someone else, it becomes more likely, doesn't it?
Yeah, it certainly does. Okay, still going on with transfers. A lot of people want to talk about different things, but yeah, Dominic CalvertLewin has come into the equation. Stu, would you be happy if Dominic CalvertLewin turned up at Newcastle? I personally think he would be a good fit. Says David. Roger says, would you be miffed if Dominic CalvertLewin became our first signing? I mean, understandably, people concerned about him being linked. He has had seasons where he's missed a considerable amount of games with injuries, but he's also somebody who would probably come and be happy to to sit in that kind of second place as a striker. Isak's obviously going to be number 1 choice, but who probably could do a job, like Wilson has in the past when Isak hasn't been fit. So, what would you be disappointed if he came in?
Well, the question probably stems from everyone playing Football Manager, doesn't it? And would he be a good fit? It depends what role he's got. But then the same thing could be said about how I've just answered the question about Callum Wilson. He might still believe he's been tagged with his injury-prone thing, but he was available for the majority of last season, and he played in most of the games as well. He didn't score many, but Everton are habitually low scorers, and they don't create many chances. So in what has been over the last couple of years a free scorer Newcastle team, if he gets the chances, could he put them away? The confidence would be higher. He's playing with better players. So the question I would throw back is, would you rather have him or Wilson? And Dominic CalvertLewin, I'm sure, values himself. 2 seasons ago, he had a fantastic Premier League. I think he got 25 goals or something like that. So he's now looking at this situation where, why do I want to go and be number 2 or number 3 there when I can go and be number 1 there? So we can't answer these questions, and this is why we're better off leaving it to the people who are paid handsomely to do so. But would I be miffed if he was our first signing? It'd be an underwhelming signing for sure, because normally you want to get out, set your stall out and get in an ideal world, you get your marquee, sign it in and says, like, this is us, this is what we're doing. So if he is the first signing, it would be underwhelming. But as it would be if we announced Callum Wilson, I'd be more miffed and disappointed if he was the only signing. So that's which is a different question, but I'm sure he won't be. So I think the signing of, or the re-signing of Callum Wilson, or a signing of Dominic CalvertLewin, could only be judged at the end of the window and see where and how we've strengthened elsewhere. And if it means that we can get the first team starters in the positions that the majority of us think that we need them in, then for me, it's something that we can do, because you're right. You're not going to get the top quality forward that you want, knowing that Isak's going to be number 1. It's quite clear that Isak will start every game, and he would for just about every team on the planet. So to anyone, to be a centre forward, you've got to have a selfish mentality, and you've got to have a huge belief in your own ability. So to say, right, I'll go there and I'll just be a bit part player, it's the hardest role to fill. So if that means we can get a top of the range right winger, centre half, goalkeeper, and possibly even an addition in midfield if one goes out, then I would accept that for this season. And if that means we have to sell Isaac next year because we haven't qualified the Champions League, we'll have enough money to go and buy any other striker we want, plus someone extra and someone else as well, and someone else because of the way the amateurisation works.
Barry Hogan says, Stu, which journalists do you trust?
Well, do we qualify as journalists because we're writing the fanzines?
No, not really.
To be fair, as I understand it, if you write 12 times in a printed edition, then you can be accredited as a journalist. But that's just me being tongue-in-cheek. The ones I trust, I think, if that's aimed at the Newcastle band, it's quite clear there's one I don't trust, who is for clickbait. Well, a lot of them are for clickbait, and that's the job. And I know we've covered that lots of times. But Craig Hope, I think, for me, is one that's he's obviously got a lot of contacts, and he knows how to use them without making it clear where he's got his information from. So Craig Hope, and I know some people, you mentioned Craig Hope, and they don't like it, but what he does do is he tells the truth. He gives normally a balanced opinion, and it's not sensationalized. So I do like Craig Hope, and there's a couple of writers for the Chronicle that I think do write well. The headlines aren't great, and then when you try and go on the website with all adverts, it's not great, and it gets pushed out. So the main one that comes to my mind straight away would be Craig Hope.
Okay, that's an answer, and we'll move on. Lawrence says, has it ever crossed your mind the top players don't want to sign for us or for Eddie Howe due to his run till you're injured style of football?
I don't think Eddie Howe has a run till you're injured style of football because he wouldn't have the camaraderie in the squad that he's got. But I think the question might be that he demands every last ounce out of the players. And if that question was asked at the start of last season, I think it would have carried more weight. But with the introduction of Bunce, this season just finished, the injuries were a lot lower, and the players were predominantly fit and able to perform more. But we didn't have any European football. We could focus on the league games, and we could focus on the cups, and that bore fruit for us. But again, I go back to January, and I know I'm crossing two things here, but I mentioned then in January, if we didn't bring someone in, because the players were playing at full pelt, because they were given everything, and they weren't allowed a rest because the first 11 or the first 14 could pick ourselves every single week. And this is why I think the quality over quantity thing adds additions to that, because you can't ask someone like Tonali or Bruno the amount of miles they cover every game to do that 50 to 60 times next season. So you do need people to come in and be just as good and know the role without having to change formations, which then, for me, it dilutes the strength of what the team is. You've got people coming in, understand the role, and more importantly, capable of putting it out. But I don't think he runs him into the ground. He demands more than other managers, and he has a style of play that is more in your face. But that's been quite I get it. Well done, Sam. Because there's only me instead of Mitch. There's no rudeness there. Yeah. So what was I saying there? I get that he demands a lot of the players, but if the players didn't want to do it, they wouldn't. So there is this unity between the players where they want to, and where we can advance from that is if you've got someone like, I'll use Anthony Gordon as an example. He, for the first, especially all of the season before last, he knew that he was playing regardless. And then since Bonds came in and excelled when he's had the opportunity, it raised his game. If you remember, because he wasn't a starter at the start of, not the season finished, the season before. It was like the brought Barnes in, is Gordon going to start? That elevated Gordon to push himself to a level where he got player of the season. And this is where the competition with places is good. But we need to be in a position, if we are going to be the big boys, because we keep overachieving and keep finishing amongst them, we need it to be a position where players understand they're going to be rotated, they're not dropped, they are rested, and it is for their benefit. But I don't think it would put a player off saying, I want to sign for Newcastle United. I don't want to sign for Newcastle United because he's going to ask me to give my 100%. Because if that's in the player's makeup, then I don't think anyhow would want to sign him anyway.
Yeah, okay. Let's get through a few more questions. Stu says, Roger, do you think asset-wise, we, PIF anyway, will utilise the women's team? Obviously, that's in response, I guess, to what we've seen with Aston Villa and Chelsea, of course.
No, I don't think they will. And I put in our little group at the start of the week when, well, I know we've talked about for months that Villa were the next team that were going to do it. But I really would be surprised if Newcastle United did that. And if they did, that to me is an admission that we haven't got people in place to bring the extra revenue in through sponsorships. And although I've seen a lot of varying debates, and you had a great one regarding it on the fans forum on Monday, where everyone gave different opinions. But mine is Chelsea, the way they could justify their nigh on 200 million. And this is what I put in our group, Steve. They justified that because they were looking at projections over the next 20 odd years. And they've done that in a position of strength. And their valuation or calculation of how the women's team is going to progress. Well, if you look how Newcastle's women's team has progressed in the last 2 or 3 years, and that was a avenue for us to say, right, I'll tell you what, we'll put a lot of money into there. There's no reason why with the PAF fund backing, which I think would go down well with the way Saudi Arabia is opening up, to make Newcastle United the dominant women's team, not just in Britain, but in Europe. So we could go and value ours, because you can't do it on what's been done. You can do it on what's going to do, and that's how Chelsea managed to do their figure. But we could go and say, well, we value ours at 500 million. But I don't think they will. I honestly believe that they want to do it right way. But imagine if they did the same as Aston Villa, just 55 million. Villa put that figure out because they know they could get away with it. If Newcastle did the same and then they went on to become that dominant force, then it looks like a very bad mistake. So my opinion is not just that they want to be whiter than white, not just that it's not ethically right, because then it opens the morals discussion. I just believe that the PAF don't see selling the women's team. They want that unity. They want the men's and women's teams progressing, and that's been reflective in a lot of the advertising for strips and what we answered the question on before. So I would be shocked if that's the decision that was made to sell the women's team, and the reason being is what I just gave there, Steve. I think it's just admission that we've got people who want bringing the revenue in. That should be one of the last things we look at to generate, because it's a short-term fix. It may give us money for one season, but then what does that do the year after, the year after, the year after? Let the women's team grow organically. Let them get in the position where they get in the playoffs or even promoted next season. And then they'll hopefully hold their head above water for a couple of years after that. And then hopefully over the next 5 to 6 years, they can start challenging for European places in that league.
Yeah, okay. Let's get a few more questions. Stu, if Silverstone is that bad, why have the owners not got rid of him?
That's the £100 million question, isn't it? I don't think he's bad. I think he's... it's probably the way I put things across. I think he should be doing more. And I believe he was brought in because they thought he was capable of doing more. Now, and I know we've mentioned not just on the professionals, but on the amigos as well, but more so on the professionals because of mine and Mitch's knowledge of the area. Here in the Middle East, and myself, how I deal with the Saudis on a daily basis, is I've said for enough that they'll give you enough rope to hang yourself. So I'm still surprised that he hasn't been given a nudge. But I'm sitting here in Bahrain not knowing what goes on in the powers of, well, the corridors of power at St. James. So it could be quite possible that he's doing a lot more than what we know. But not just about sponsorships. But I wouldn't be shocked in the least if they're not looking for someone to replace, because that's what they do. You know, they want things to keep progressing, and they're off the mindset that if you stand still, you go backwards. And that's what we want as owners, from our owners. That's what we as fans should want. So I think as soon as you appoint someone, you've got to start looking and think, is there someone out there who I could get in that's better? And I think Peter Silverstone will know that more than most. And I'm trying not to swear. In a lot of ways, which people might find difficult, Saudis are very much like Geordies. As in, don't pay me back until it's his rating. And if they get a whiff of that, that's happening with them, then they could well make a change. But they'll only make a change once they know they've got someone in to make it better.
Okay, lots of opinions about journalists and stuff like that, and different things that we can do. I'm trying to avoid the obvious questions that we tend to get asked on here on a regular basis. So apologies if I haven't come to questions about sponsorships and stuff like that. And again, it would be an opinion. We don't have any inside track. Nobody does really on what's happening with the stadium, sponsorship, etc. We like to mix as well with a few just personal questions. Here's one. Stu, Samba or Gazelle?
To disappoint you, Steve, I'm going to say Gazelles.
All right, there you go. Nicholas will be disappointed, I'm sure, as well. Sookie says, who's your preference on the two sporting directors who've been linked today?
Yeah, what's his name? I had the Forest one, the one that was at Nottingham Forest. That would be my preference. And if you look at the type of players that they've signed, I think it would fit in very well with what we've done. But I think a new sporting director will come once Eddie Howe's got the players in that he wants. This is very much going to be Eddie Howe's team good at or squad good at the next season. There's your money. Go and get the people that you want, and then they'll get a sporting director in to start buffering things around, like with the youth ranks, the ladies, then adding to the squad. And that wasn't a couple of years back, Steve. That was last year when I put that figure on. And if you remember, the now much respected Saudi expert for TalkSport, who's been to Saudi twice in the last 10 years, wouldn't take the bet with me, but I still paid up, if you remember.
Yeah,
and
you did.
I did that so charities could benefit. But I look at figures in a simple way, and I think the revenue has increased. We had the Adidas deal, we had the Champions League money, and I just couldn't see how we didn't have the money to spend. And I did how much we've spent in the previous windows to how much went out. And I understand that slows things down. But again, without trying to come out from the question, I think if we had bigger sponsors, that these sort of questions wouldn't be asked. But if I had to put a figure on, I would do the same as I said last year. If I'm getting pushed into it, I'd say we've got 150 million net to spend. So if we get players out, that could be more, but I could be wrong. But for sure, there's money to spend this year. There can't not be. But that doesn't mean they're just going to go and, as I said at the start of the show, Steve, spend it like Everton did and just buy him because he's available. They'll be very careful what they did. No, I didn't say 300. I said 150.
Okay, moving on from that one now. As I say, we're limited on time. Big thank you to everybody watching on Twitter. Occasionally, I'll put it out on Twitter just to remind people that we do a podcast. And if you're liking what you hear, we do 7 shows a week, and you can subscribe to the channel for free. Just go to NUFC Matters on YouTube. But we have 1,240 watching live tonight. So Stu's a big pull tonight, which is great. And I know he always finds that amazing. And
I won't have to lose figures.
And a big thank you to everybody. A big thank you to everybody as well who often chips in. People make donations every now and then. We never ask for them. We never beg for them on here. We don't really need them. But it's nice when people do that. And just to say that it was well spent yesterday. I always put the money to one side that people donate, and I make sure that the Malverno Fund is topped up, and it was 7 bottles of Malverno yesterday between me, George, Steve Hasty, and Mitch. And bearing in mind that George is teetotal usually, that's a hell of an achievement. George did partake in the red wine and the food, and he had a lovely time. So it was great.
How many bottles were this, Steve, when I was last over and we were all together?
11,
it was 12, wasn't it?
11 or 12, yeah. So it was substantially more. But there was more people there. But I mean, it was. I tell you what, good effort by George yesterday to get through that. We can talk to George tomorrow night about it. I'm sure he'll give it a mention. If he has recovered, I've texted him to make sure he's still alive anyway, and he is okay. Let's pick a couple of different questions as well before we finish. Let me see. Gary says, "What was your favourite lesson at school, Stu?"
PE's obviously the obvious one, isn't it? But I did like geography, which is probably not surprising considering the travelling I've done. But it was PE and then geography.
Okay, Joe Walker isn't asking a question. Oh, he is. He says, Rafi, please can you ask Mr. P if he still thinks it's acceptable to send inappropriate messages to someone when they're in meetings, and I always get caught out asking for a friend.
He's asking for a lot of friends, I would imagine. But I only share with friends what I receive, and it's only right to share things. Now, I don't know if that's a slur at me or a slur at Joe's slowness for not realising what's in his inbox and then still opening it up. Yeah. But Joe's one of the many that do receive some of the messages that I get and I pass on. But I do get caught out myself with a lot of them.
I did.
The best ones are when people say, "No, I'm not opening that," and it's just a normal one. You know, it's but there's been some very colourful replies, shall I say, to many of the messages that have been sent, and some of the situations people have been caught out in. I'll give you one example. Keith Patterson was in the doctor's surgery one day when he was going through. I can say it now because he's told everyone when he's going through his cancer, which he's recovered from, thankfully, and he was just about to go into the doctor's surgery to have a consultation about that, and he's message from Stu, and I think that was prior or just after the takeover, and he's opened it up and he's walked into the doctor's room with a woman, let's just say, pretty excited about what was happening in her life at that time. So I get it, Joe, but I received them as well, and every time I say to him, and I never lie, that's the thing. You say, "I'm not opening that," and I say, "No, you can do," and he won't do it. But when I tell him that he can't, I don't tell him not to open it. He opens it and he gets caught out. But I know Mark Byers mentioned it earlier as well. He's very guilty. He's very guilty of being caught out as well. But he's a bad one as well. He sends terrible ones.
Yeah, good stuff. Red or brown sauce, Chippers asks.
Oh, red sauce, absolutely.
Yeah.
It has to be Heinz, so it has to be Heinz.
Has to be Heinz.
If there's no Heinz, I won't have it.
Do you have a swear box, a large swear box, and does it cover any flights back to the UK?
Yeah, I don't often swear, strangely enough, and it's something I pride myself on. I mean, I do if I'm in a bar with the lads and just in conversation, but I don't often. I've never swore where my mother could hear it. Maybe once when I caught someone scalped in my car and she heard us, but I've never swore at her. And around my children or other people's children, I won't swear. And Mitch and George will vouch for that, and so will Mini Mitch, because I created a swear box for her from people in Dubai, and she walked off a very wealthy young woman that day. And so I can swear, don't get me wrong, I can. But I think when it's more of an education thing, you're losing the argument. If you have to come out with profanities too quickly, it's normally I've got to say, and it's not what you say, it's how you say it. You know, so there's a certain swear word that people find really offensive, but you could say it in a manner that's like affectionate, it's friendly and stuff like that. So I try not to swear, and if you watch all these podcasts, I'm probably the one who swears the least.
Yeah. How far does your Scottish heritage go? Always nod at the Penman shield on the A1, says Phil.
It's very kind of you, Phil. Well, that was a question that you should ask Mr. Penman Senior. And I only found this out last year. And I'll give you a bit of boring Penman history. The way the name Penman comes from going back to the Middle Ages where people lived in little villages and little clusters and things like that. The penman was the one who could write, and he was the most intelligent person in the village. So that's where penman comes from. Now, obviously, the intelligence bit's been disintegrated over the generations, but the heritage, my dad checked, and it's something, you know, when people are retired, they get more time on their hands to do things like this. And apparently we're descendants of Robert the Bruce. But I'll have to take his word for it.
All right. Well, my family's descending from Oliver Cromwell, so we'll make an interesting couple. What's your tartan, Stu? Do you have a particular tartan?
I've got a few. I've got the Robson tartan, then obviously you've got the Flower of Scotland, I've got the Fraser tartan, Cunningham tartan, there's the Heart of Midlothian tartan, like that my father supports and things like that. What else is there? There's about 4 or 5 I could wear. But we've preferred one is obviously I can use the Royal Stuart, which is the most famous tartan in the world. The traditional red one that people used to buy on. You know, if you went to London, you come back with someone with a tartan, or you went to Edinburgh, I suppose. Yeah. But I think it was I'm trying to remember when I got married, but I had a kilt on, and it was. He'll probably remember better. It was either the Robson tartan or Scotland the Brave tartan. It was like a purpley and blue colour. That would be my preferred one.
How's the tartan paint? Did you say Byers? I'm sure Byers comes from the medieval cowshed. Brilliant.
All something.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, we only said we'd do an hour. We've reached that hour. Stu will be back with Mitch early Saturday morning. We're going to do the professionals at 8:30 on Saturday morning. Reason being that Mitch and Stu are going to be together, and they're going to be out and about on Sunday. And I'm actually Saturday. Yes, and I'm actually in London on Saturday, so won't be able to do Sunday. So it's worked out great. But it'll be 8:30, so the usual time that we would do the Northeast Football Podcast is when we'll be doing it. So you'll have to set your alarm early if you want to listen to Mitch and Stu. And it'll probably only be an hour-long show on the morning because they've got a brunch to go to, being a few hours ahead as well. So that'll be Sunday morning. Amigos, though, will be on Friday night, 5 till 7, back at the normal time. I'm going to do Ask George tomorrow night, and that'll be live as well. That will be at 6 o'clock. But I was having a chat yesterday with Mitch and Stu, and with Mitch and Steve and George. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to alternate the Ask George, the Ask Mitch, the Ask, we're going to do maybe a monthly rota for that, because people seem to have enjoyed this over the summer. And I think it's nice when people just get a chance to chat, because I think in the words of Mitch yesterday, it gets a bit diluted when we sometimes do shows together and don't always get a chance to do the full, get everything off your chest that you wanted to say. So I think that's what we're going to be doing as the new season kicks in. But Stu, thanks for tonight, mate. Look forward to seeing you on Saturday morning, bright and early. Speak to you soon, mate. Take care.
Just want to thank everyone for watching, because I thought they might have just been one man and his dog. So thank you very much for tuning in.
Yeah, top man. See you soon, mate. Take care.
Cheers, Steve. See you Saturday.